Welcome to Simple Conversation with ASG.
Follow your new favorite podcast host with a link in the description.
So, tell me, who is Benjamin Shrader?
Hello, my friends. My name is Benjamin Shrader. I run an event production company in Austin, Texas, Shrader Promotions, LLC. I organize concerts all across the state of Texas with rappers like G-Eazy, Wiz Khalifa, country artists Parker McCollum, Co Wetzel, and many, many more. I'm a brain tumor survivor. I have very severe dyslexia, and I am very excited to be with you today.
It's quite a lot to cover now because you've got quite the story, but the first thing that stands out to me straight away is, well, being from Ireland, that we don't really have any kind of differences in this, but you say you have very severe dyslexia. Is there a difference between, just like the general diagnosis of dyslexia and it becoming severe?
Yes. So basically, 1 in every 5 people have dyslexia. However, because the brain, a lot of times today it's referred to as like neural diversity, because the brain is so complicated and science really doesn't understand it that well, that huge group of people with dyslexia is probably have very different conditions that we just don't really have names for. So some people will have just a little trouble reading, and other people, like myself, I am in the 1 percentile when scaled with other dyslexics. So mine is incredibly severe. I was told I would never learn how to read, but 9 years of reading therapy with the Orton Gillingham program, the original, and an amazing older lady who really taught me how to read. I was able to get to about a third grade reading level, and that's where I'm at to this day, but it's enough to function. There's also, of course, dysgraphia, dyscalculia. I have both of those. That's trouble with writing and trouble with math, but those are severe, but not as severe as my dyslexia.
In Ireland, people who have those kind of conditions, they're in schools anyway, they're kind of assigned almost like a learning assistant, someone to really help them. In America, is it the same?
Boy, well, I wish I was in Ireland. It used to be that there were very few accommodations. It even, let's say 10 years ago, that's one of the things that motivated me to become more involved with dyslexic activism. I spoke at the International Dyslexia Association's conference, but it used to be that there were a lot of people who denied even the existence of dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia, and just would say, okay, this person's either dumb or lazy. That is not as common today. There's a lot of scientific evidence backing and proving that dyslexia is a real thing. It's basically the older version of the brain from a time before writing and things like that were big. Today, accommodations are offered as long as you have a certified learning specialist that diagnoses you and then recommends accommodations. So when I was in school, I'd have double time on tests and either a computerized or individual proctoring and reading to me. A lot of times, though, sadly, there is a massive lack of help for dyslexics. Recently, dyslexia was classified as a actual learning disability. I like to call it a learning difference. I got half the neural net connections of an average man on one side, but double on the other. So, they call it twice gifted. They said that to me as a kid, and I was like, can I give the gift back? It's silly saying things like that. But yeah, it sounds like Ireland's a bit ahead of us on that. I'm 25% Irish, but I'm missing out on. It sounds like you guys have got a good handle on it.
Yeah, it's offered quite in-depth help here, but I've always wondered this with people because it's quite hard to talk to people who have it because you sound like you're coming from a place of privilege asking this, but is it hard to accept help doing something that, like, you look around and the rest of the class is doing it so effortlessly, like writing and reading?
100%. And then there's no stress about asking in the least. I talk about this stuff all the time. It is, when I was younger, I was very angry. and I looked at, maybe we all can be a little arrogant, especially some of us, referring to myself. But dyslexia keeps me humble because I would look at people reading Harry Potter, I remember, and I could not, I physically, I couldn't read it. Best way I can describe dyslexia, it's like looking at a foreign language. So you can identify the characters, you can say, okay, that's ABC, but you couldn't say that word. I was very angry. I did not want help. I wanted to do it on my own. I said, I will either figure this out or I will survive. But over time, I came to see, and this is something I encourage a lot of my fellow dyslexics, especially younger ones, to nobody does most things alone. So getting help and receiving accommodations is good and needed. It is also embarrassing. I remember being taken out of class and kids snickering and things like that. So it definitely there is an element of that for sure, where there's a resentment almost, or jealousy of the readers, as I call them. I want to get up there like Magneto and say, "Join me, fight together in a brotherhood of Archon." But that is the thing. Not as much for me anymore, luckily. Now I can hire an assistant. So, but back in the day, 100%.
Yeah, I suppose at the time you were probably too young to know that that was kind of building a skill set for you. But do you think now, looking back, being able to accept that help and like just kind of being humble, do you think that now helped you run a business?
I do. I do. A huge part of business success that I've had, I'm a firm believer in a little phrase I coined: kindness is the new currency. Now, of course, kindness won't pay your bills, but I have found that there's enough cake to go around, as the expression says. There's plenty of pie for everybody, and that you will win over a lot more people, or as the expression goes, you'll catch a lot more flies with honey than vinegar. You will win over a lot more people by being humble. So, as doing work on social media, that's primarily how I sell my tickets on my Instagram, at Benjamin Shrader, of course. But doing that, I will sometimes be a little more arrogant or bodacious on social media. However, in that's a aspect of my personality. In real life, I really do my best not to be arrogant and to be, to treat every person as the potential ally that they are. So learning that humility and being reminded of it constantly. I often speak of a time I was putting on a massive show. I have thousands of people in the audience. The artists are on stage. I'm going around in my suit with a ever so slight scowl, looking serious. And I pull out a paper, and I have my notes, the lists of the artists coming up, things like that. And I can't read it for the life of me. And sometimes when I'd say when I'm under pressure or when I'm a little more stressed, like my ability to read will abandon me. And I'm looking at it and I laugh to myself because I say, Ben, you organized this massive concert, and yet you can't read the paper in your hands. I joke from the heights of transcendent joy to the depths of failure. But, eventually I just grabbed one of the other stage hands and I was like, okay, I need to tell me what's next. So,
Yes.
hey, that comes to asking for help.
Yeah. So do you have to hire someone to do those type of things for you now in your business?
So I actually do. I do. Luckily today with text to speech, so that's, I can talk to the phone and it can write things, and voice to text. And I love the ChatGPT's new talk feature. But I have a couple employees and a couple contractors, but I have my two main people are actually advisors and assistants who I will meet with almost every day. And we will go through all of my emails, we'll write descriptions, documents, just with a lot of the like text to speech softwares, you might not have a comma in the right place or a period in the right place. Or I once was organizing a deal and I was using text to speech, and instead of putting whatever word I wanted, it put urine. multiple times in the email. And I mean, I'm talking to this man who owns a bunch of different venues, and I'm like, oh yes, okay, urine, yada yada, urine. And I've also accidentally, it's put curse words or things like that, and I'm like, oh my god, and then I explained to them, oh, it's the voice text, my apologies. But yes, my main lady, Megan, she does an amazing job, and it's funny. I'm able to get a lot more done when I am able to sort of be like I don't have dyslexia for a minute. But then again, I wouldn't be the man I am without it. I would have turned out to be some jerk in college, or some frat guy that was not nice to anybody. But dyslexia reminds me that we all have our struggles.
It's funny you mention college, because anyone that I know that has quite well, I wouldn't say they have quite the severe case of dyslexia, but it's a lot more, it's a lot worse than others. None of them have ever made it to university or college level. Can you explain how you ended up at Texas A&M?
Yes, yes. Oh boy, that's incredibly. I'm sorry about that. It is. It was definitely difficult. I I'd always wanted to be an entrepreneur, but when you're a kid, you have no idea how to do that. So I said, college is important, and it is important to have that legitimacy. I am still pro college to this day. I believe that it is good to have the legitimacy of a degree, proving to people that you were able to go through and do that. Also, the connections one made and can make in college. For myself, I was a C and B student. I was, sadly, it breaks my heart, I did not get into the University of Texas at Austin. That would have been where I would have gone first, but I didn't get in. I was offered something called Berlin Team at Texas A&M. I don't believe the program exists anymore, but for the first 2 years, you were a student at Texas A&M and at Berlin, the local community college. So doing that was sort of a great gateway, and I was still a CB and the occasional A in history or communications. You set me up to talk, and I can do that fine. But it was hard in high school. I didn't have a great GPA. I had an okay one. I didn't have a great SAT score. It's been years. I forget what it was. It was middle of the road. There were some tests that I don't know how I passed. There was one math exam I had to pass to get a C in the class, and I passed it by 1 point. Truly a miracle, because I have no idea how I passed that math test. I didn't know anything. That is how I came to A&M, and then I don't bring this up a lot, but I did not graduate from Texas A&M as I had a brain tumor in my third year. I actually ended up finishing up at UTSA, the University of Texas San Antonio, online. So it was tough, but college was less difficult, I would say, than high school. Surprisingly, more engaged professors, more accommodations. Texas A&M doesn't have the massive accommodation departments that schools like the University of Arizona might have under their SALT program. But they have a sizable program. The gentleman that ran it was amazing at A&M, and I was able to receive the accommodations I need. And of course, nobody likes driving to the learning center when everyone else is able to take their test. But you suck it up, and yeah, I was able to figure it out, I guess.
Anybody that listened to you say it, talking about that, probably heard the buzzword that was brain tumor, and I'm trying to find a way to transition into it without
I guess we did.
sounding harsh, but you've done my work for me here, so it's pretty amazing. Can you explain what happened there a little bit?
So this was probably one of the most difficult experiences in my life. Luckily, I'm an oversharer, and I'll talk about anything.
Amazing.
My junior year of college, I had already started my event production company, and that probably should be the next thing we'll touch on.
It will be,
But
don't worry.
I had started that. I was working. I was doing a lot of events for companies, for fraternities, for venues out there, putting on really the largest concerts in College Station. We were the largest event production company out there. And it was amazing. But I had been nauseous my entire life, and I just thought I had weak nerves and a nervous stomach. And I pushed through it because I'm Benjamin Shrader. I'm strong like Iron Railroad. There's no nausea is going to keep me down. I did not know that was a symptom. I would find that out later. I had minor pressure in my right ear and a little bit of hearing loss. And only 2% hearing loss, but just enough that you could tell something was weird. Sounds would also sound a little odd. They would sound slightly warped almost in my right ear. So I'd always just end up wearing my AirPod in my left because the right sounded weird. And I was thinking, oh, it's too bad. It's hearing loss from all the loud concerts. It just stinks. But these things happen. However, at another big show I was doing, I was making sure to wear earplugs because I said, okay, this is important. I don't want to lose my hearing. And even people who haven't had a brain tumor always wear earplugs. Hey, trust me, being half deaf is not ideal. And so I said, you know what? I am going to go to the doctor just to assuage my worries so that I don't have to stress about it anymore because everything's fine. At the time, I would have been 22, 23. I would have been 23. Forgive me, I forget exactly. But I said, I'm a young guy. Nothing's going to be an issue. So I go to the doctor. They look at it and they say, okay, your inside of your ear looks fine. But let's just get you a CT scan. That's a scan of your bones. Let's just get you a scan of your bones to be safe. They send me in. I get a scan of my bones. And they say, wow, okay, your bones look a little weird in your right ear. They're a little warped. But, you might have just been born that way. But let's get you an MRI just to be safe. And I had a show I was doing. So I've been working on that. I wasn't looking at my phone. I wasn't keeping up with messages from the doctor. Because I had my MRI, but it's all going to be fine. I'm not going to get any bad news. That'd be crazy. So I get a call from my parents, and I'm very close to my family. I love them both very much. They're amazing people. And we talk all the time, but this was out of the blue in the middle of the day. And so I pick up my phone and I say, oh, well, hey, Mom, what's up? And my parents tell me a little bit panicked that the hospital called them. And said that I need to get in touch with them immediately. And so that's when my heart dropped because, you know how American healthcare is just notorious around the world. The hospital doesn't try to call you. If they're willing and able to get a hold of you like that, then something is really wrong. So I call them. They say, okay, we'll have you come in tomorrow. They don't tell me what's wrong over the phone. I don't sleep a wink that night. I just lie in bed. I pace a little bit because you're like, who knows what it could be. So basically I go in, 2 doctors sit me down and they pull up a couple scans. I don't know what the scans look like, but there's this big white glob next to my brain. And that never is a good sign. And they say, well, Benjamin, you have something called an acoustic neuroma. It is likely a benign tumor, but we won't know till we go in. It is the size of a golf ball. It is growing from your hearing nerve in your right ear underneath your brain and pushing up against your brain stem. You are at serious risk of a stroke, and we need to get this out ASAP. And if you don't get it removed, you will only have 2 to 5 years before you have a life-ending stroke. So, yeah, that I kept it together in there, though. I only cried in the Uber afterwards. It was horrifying. And I mean, that's not something you expect. And this was at the very end of COVID. This was at the very end of that time. And so there were still some restrictions in place, still some things like that. So they recommend a hospital. My parents take me to one hospital. I tell you, it was one of the most horrifying experiences of my life. This hospital was not ideal. I felt like I was in Eastern Europe. I mean, it was not ideal. Their tech was old. No offense to any doctors or anything, but the doctor that would have been performing this surgery was like 80. And that's not an exaggeration. And it is a 12-hour surgery. And they said, there's no way we can save your facial nerve because basically your balance, your hearing, and your facial nerve are all going through your ear canal. And my balance nerve was partially destroyed. That's why I'd been nauseous my entire life. My hearing nerve was starting to be destroyed, but my facial nerve was still intact. So, and if I didn't get that saved, it would look like I'd had a stroke. I wouldn't be able to control half my face. Funny enough, the actor who plays the Hulk in the Marvel universe, he had the same tumor, and he actually cannot control half of his face. But returning to the story, that hospital, horrifying. My wonderful family, they take me to MD Anderson. It is literally the best in the world. Royalty will go there. Saudi Arabian princes, everybody goes to MD Anderson. They tell me, okay, we're going to be able to save your facial nerve, but we're going to have to go in, 12-hour surgery, 2 doctors and a couple residents. We're going to need to go in and peel this tumor out bit by bit. You're almost certainly going to go deaf in that ear, and your balance nerve is basically completely destroyed. But over time, you'll be able to learn to compensate on your left side. So you'll be able to learn to walk again. Because if you're missing a balance nerve, I couldn't tell where my head was. I would just fall over. They send me in. I remember waking up and I knew the surgery was done because I heard nothing but an incessant ringing in my right ear. And that is the real cruelty of being deaf. It is not silent. Your brain is looking for a signal that is not there. So it rings constantly. Think of loud tinnitus. If I wasn't already crazy, it would drive me crazy. So I spent 2-3 weeks, about a month in the hospital. I started going for physical therapy because losing my balance nerve, I would just fall over. I had 61 stitches. Luckily, they were able to remove it. Luckily, it was not cancerous. I would later have to go back for a radiation treatment called Gamma Knife. Thank God I didn't lose my hair. I'm very vain. I'd hate that. So they were able to zap it. They do put your head in a vice, though, and I did it without any sedative because I was like, I want to remember this. Silly me. I also find sedatives and things like that very constipating, but we'll skip over that part. It was like a Saw movie, horror movie. They put you in a vice, and they had a Spotify playing with the Gamma Knife because you have to lay there for 3 hours, but they didn't have a premium Spotify account. So it was, we are farmers, Home Depot's new ad, Lowe's is great new sale, every couple songs. It was driving me crazy. That was the one complaint I submitted. I said, please get a premium Spotify account. That Gamma Knife comes about a year and a half after all of that tumor. But I, would go for physical therapy a couple times a week, started to be able to walk again, get my balance back. And today, I'll still stumble a little sometimes, which is funny working in nightlife. I never will drink or consume any mind-altering substances when I'm working because it is, critically important. I need to be on point. However, because I'm missing a balance nerve, I will sometimes stumble, and people who know me will joke. I say, "Oh, Ben, are you drunk?" And I'm like, "No, I had a brain tumor. You're terrible." But sadly, however, when I went back for one of my yearly MRIs, this would be about a year ago, they said the little piece we had to leave to save your facial nerve is regrowing. So we're going to have to send you for Gamma Knife. They sent me for the Gamma Knife. A lot of ads later. And I went back 4 months ago for right now. I got an MRI and they said it's officially dead. So I'm brain tumor free. Every year I have to go back for the rest of my life to get an MRI just to make sure that nothing's regrowing. But we are basically in the clear. Thank God.
Amazing. This may be a little bit of like a weird question to ask, but it's always whenever I hear people have like kind of developing out of the blue tumors. Do you remember if the hospital ever told you if there was anything that may have caused it even a little bit?
Yes. So, they said I probably had it since sometime in high school. And it's funny enough, I have a vague memory of going to Austin City Limits, ACL, a big music festival with a buddy of mine in high school. And I couldn't stop walking into him. I would think I was walking straight. And, I was maybe 16, and I was very much not a goody two shoes. I could be a troublemaker, but I was like a law abiding citizen. So I wasn't drinking, wasn't doing anything. But I kept walking into him. I could not walk straight for the life of me. And that is probably when it started developing and destroying my balance nerve. And my brain was trying to learn how to compensate. Of course, I hadn't fully lost the balance nerve. And when I did, I had to learn how to walk again and stuff. But since I hadn't fully lost it, it was just trying to learn how to compensate. They do not know why I got it. I have no family history of brain tumors. Nothing I did that I was just unlucky, but acoustic neuromas is basically a overgrowth of myelin sheath, overgrowth of nerve coating tissue. And usually older folks get it. We're talking 60s, 70s. The fact that I got it so young, and thank God I didn't get it on the other side, because sometimes in my other ear, I only had it in one ear. Some people do get it in both, and that's bad. They don't know why, but because I was so young and I had, the normal HGH, that a human growth hormone that we make as we're growing, caused the brain tumor to grow to the large size that it was. Normally, these are pea-sized tumors, and they don't even need to operate. They can just do gamma knife. But because mine was massive, they had to operate and then do gamma knife. So yeah, they really don't know why. Who knows? Maybe I was just hit by some cosmic ray, or just bad luck, or maybe I needed some more character development. They had to add to, the great writer in the sky had to make the story more interesting. What's funny is that I was COVID had hit and had really hurt the events industry. And then after that, things were really rising up again. And so I was struck down at the height of my business. But hey, we've been able to rebuild.
Amazing. You obviously mentioned the surgery and the very annoying ambience that surrounded it. But do you remember what the pain was like? Was it all sudden after the recovery pain, or was it kind of like a bulge up and bulge up?
So, funny enough, before the surgery, I had no headaches. I never got any headaches from it, which is odd. The doctors would have assumed that I would have, but I really never did. There is a moment that I forgot. When I first woke up, they had not given me much pain medication. The pain was an 11. It felt like I had had brain surgery. And I remember telling the nurse and my mother in a groggy state just that it was horrible. And apparently I started getting some brain swelling and things like that. But what's crazy is I forgot about that until I was reminded of it. Like my brain blotted out that memory because the pain was so bad. Recovering, I got off any of the opioid medications very quickly. I was worried about getting addicted. They made me sleepy and they constipated me. So I got off them very quickly. But I do take, Tylenol to this day. For a long time, for about a year, the headaches were bad. And whenever the weather changes, so if it's sunny outside, my headache's okay. When it changes to clouds and starts raining, I'll get a terrible headache. And then after a little while, then my head will feel fine. It's the pressure change. I got a bunch of titanium back there holding fragments of my skull in. They asked me, "Do you want your bone back?" And I said yes. But I didn't realize that they'd have to fuse it in. Apparently the muscles in your head are strong enough, they'll cover a hole, but I feel it's good to have your bone back, Only thing I donated to science was the tumor. But yes, so I got terrible headaches for about a year and a half. They have faded a good bit, but I still do get bad headaches. And I have to really figure out how to lay at night. It's manageable, and I just take Tylenol to to overcome it. I have a healthy amount, and I get my liver enzymes checked every year to make sure that they're fine. But yeah.
You obviously had plenty of time in your hands during the recovery process, recovering from an injury like that. What was the reflection like whenever you were in the hospital, being told you're going to have to have
Yeah.
surgery? What was that like?
Well, funny enough, I did take a few pictures because I said, it'd be good to have a record of this. Um, Unbeknownst to me, I had a great honor that was going on. A group of UT film students had decided to make a documentary about my work. I had no idea, nothing involved with it. And they were like, where did Benjamin Shrader go? Because I built up a good following, well known at College Station and at the Texas A&M campus. I had gone completely dark on social media when I found out about this. I told one person I was going to be having a series of shows with. I said, I'm going to have to cancel all this. I have a brain tumor. I told my best friend. I was like, hey, buddy, don't tell anybody this is bad. And my family. And I told nobody else. I went completely dark. Like when Stalin gets sick, you can't tell the people. Yeah, but the supreme leader's ill. And I do an interview with that documentary and everything later down the road. However, during the time and the reflection process, I was a little angry. I do my best. I'm Catholic myself. I do my best to be a good Catholic. I think it's good for people. I was angry at that time though, because you're like, boy, I go through life. I have dyslexia. It's been tough to build a business, and then you're struck down. Why me? But I also found great comfort in stoicism. As a boy, thinking I'm all special and cool, I read Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, the great Stoic philosopher. And from that, though, I do have to say that I looked at it and I said, it could always be worse. And I found comfort in that, of that it could be brain cancer. I could be going deaf in both ears, that, my face could be deformed. I was thinking, okay, am I going to have to pull a Phantom of the Opera and get some porcelain mask? It is really hard to find a porcelain mask, though. People don't really make them. So, I definitely was not looking up stuff like that. But basically, I took comfort in the fact it could be worse and that it wasn't. And I did my best to cope with it. I grew a lot closer with my family. They are amazing. They got me the best care in the world. Thank goodness for insurance. I know it's probably different in Ireland. You guys actually probably have a bit better setup than we do.
Slightly.
But I mean, this surgery would have been a Ferrari without insurance. It was a massive, extremely involved thing. But my reflection was definitely thinking about the future. I also did look at my life and I said, well, Ben, you really did your best. All I had ever wanted was to be known. And I looked at my life and I said, why'd you get into what you do? Well, college kids like to party. If you control partying, college kids will like you. That's a classic saying I say a lot. And I said, well, I put on some great events. I did the best I could with the time I had. My greatest fear is looking back on life as an old man and having regret, or failing and not being able to do what I wanted to do. It's like reincarnation would be the true hell for me. I want one good life, one good run where I can really give it my all. And then, as either Plato or Socrates said, forgive me for waxing philosophical, but I forget which one, they had said, death is either a place where I'll be able to talk to the interesting minds of old, or it's a long sleep and I can use the rest. That's how I looked at it.
Amazing. You'll be happy to know we're going to move on to something a little bit more joyful. So how did
Excellent. Everybody in the audience, please stop crying. But bust out the tissues. Forgive me.
how did you get into the whole events business, and how many people just assumed you were a Johnny Manziel fanboy when you started?
Funny enough, I only got to meet Mr. Manziel. He is a very great guy. I only got to meet him probably a year or two into things sort of popping off. Basically, when I went to college, I was a member of a program called Startup Aggieland. Also, I don't believe that program exists in the same form it did. I believe it's now called the McFerrin Center for Entrepreneurship. Great people. I've judged competitions for them, talked there multiple times. Great time, great people. I was a member of that program and their living learning community. So we all lived in the top floor of Hullabaloo Hall, one of the dormitories, and we all took a class on entrepreneurship. And you might say, well, Benjamin, how can you teach a class on entrepreneurship? It was actually valuable information. It was how to file your taxes, how to do these things, how to, pitch to investors, how to do all these type of things. And pitching was the one thing I was quite good at. I was the head pitch man for a good amount of time for multiple different startups in there. I looked at it and I came to the deduction I mentioned earlier. College kids like to party. If I control partying, college kids will like me. In my opinion, I'd been a loser my entire life up to that point. I'd been an outcast in high school. I'd been the weird kid with dyslexia who talked too much. I was determined to never be left out again and to have the ability to never be left out again. And what better way to not be left out than to put on the events yourself? So I said, okay, I got no product. I got no real idea, but what about concerts? College kids love concerts. And, nightclubs are in decline across at least all of America. I'm not sure about the world. But concerts still do extremely well and are still very popular. So I said, okay, I'm going to try this. I briefly worked for a guy who did a similar thing to what I was looking to do, but there was no LLC, no corporation behind it. It was disorganized. There was a lot of arrogance. A lot of people get into the scene because they want to party and they want to be cool. I look at events as the business that they are. I am not there to party. I'm there to provide a service to my customers and to my clients. I said, okay, I can do this a lot better than this guy and a lot of other people are doing out there. Going in it to party, going in it not seriously is not the way to do it. And I can bring, my secret nerd side out, and I can handle this with the professionalism, legitimacy, and treat it as the business it is. So I went out on my own, thanks to the help of Startup Aggieland. I started an LLC, Shrader Promotions LLC, because Shrader Productions was already taken. So Shrader Promotions LLC. I said, okay, I'm going to start this and go out on my own. And it was tough at first. I worked for kind of a dingy nightclub that did okay, but out of everybody, basically how I came to work with them at first was I would go around every night wearing a suit, talking to all the bouncers, every manager, anybody who would talk to me. And I was saying, hey, I can increase your sales with social media. You need a social media account, and then I can promote yours online. And I only had maybe 2,000-3,000 followers at the time. And most people were like, "Oh, get out of your kid. What are you doing? What are you doing?" But these people gave me a chance. And in the couple months, we added thousands of dollars in sales by making their bar the cool spot to be, by really appealing to kids. And then, funny enough, Greek organizations, some of these fraternities. I was never in a fraternity or sorority. Yeah, but I'm not, of course not. I was never in a Greek life. I was never in a fraternity myself, but I'd work with all of them because some of them have insane budgets. One of the fraternities, I won't say which one, but they had $100,000 a year party budget. It's insane, truly peak society. But I love the Greeks because they're some of my best customers. Basically, working with them, I was able to sort of get my foot in the door. And then I was able to go from promoting concerts and events, because I didn't want to be some cringy promoter, type. I did it all on social media, and I never got really into the type of thing that you might see some cringy promoters do about bringing ladies or things like that. No, no, no. I was selling tickets. This was what it was all about. And so I said, okay, the real money is in putting on concerts. So saved up, started putting on small shows at first, then had a bigger breakout show, started actually booking artists. We've had, oh my goodness, forgive me, I have a huge list, but Riff Raff, Fetty Wap, many others, Made in Tokyo, and T Wayne, rappers that I like to get people that are, of course, popular is great, but if you have high name recognition, that's all that matters to me. So even if you haven't had a hit in a few years, if you got high name recognition, that's what I want, because I can get a better price on you and people know your name and they'll buy tickets. So I got into that, and over time I was able to slowly push any competitors out of the market and turn it into College Station's the largest event production company. And with College Station and being willing to do spot shows with artists, that's where you get them while they're in the general area, and also collaborate and do multiple shows with other venues. So like I might have somebody go to a show in San Marcos, show in College Station, show in Austin, show in Houston. Before they leave Texas, I was able to expand to cities throughout Texas. And then eventually I moved to Austin, Texas, moved the majority of my operations here. Just moved a couple months ago, but it has been amazing. Being in Austin has been incredible for the business. I got a massive show coming up, and so it'll be great. Money's either amazing or terrible in this business. So yeah, all depending on who you have booked. But we're doing okay for the cause, and it's a good time.
You've kind of answered this in parts, but I need to ask you this because it was the only question burning in my head whenever I was researching you. What are the requirements of a good event? Because I'm sure you've seen, and I've seen many hopeful event planners that just put on terrible events.
Yep. Okay. Number one, when you're creating the event, before you even pick a day, you want to look at your target audience. So let's say college kids. I would go and I would look at the college schedule, and I would make sure that there was nothing overlapping on that day. A company contracted me for advising once for their event. And I said, it's not something I usually do, but hey, they were paying well, so I can be a damn good advisor. Excuse me for the language. But they had brought me in, and I said, okay, do not do your event on this day. There is something called a ring dunk going on. It's when the kids would get their college rings. I said, do not do it on this day. And they said, oh, okay, we'll think about it. And I'm saying, please don't do it on this day. You have to trust me. Nobody's going to show up. They did it on ring day. Nobody showed up. So look at that first. Number two, you need to make things easy for the people. You do not want it to be hard for them. On your flyer, what the main things that need to be identifiable is when, what time, where, how do I get tickets? That's all, literally all that matters. You have that, and you can have a QR code, or if it's electronic, you can have a link, things like that. Physical flyers aren't really common anymore, so most are electronic. You put it on your story. Link is in the bio, and not any inappropriate link, but a link to Eventbrite. I'm a big fan of Eventbrite. There are a couple other softwares that are really coming into prominence right now. Like I believe Posh is one of them. Dice, which sounds sketchy, but it's a ticket selling software. I don't believe in gambling myself, but those are all. There are a lot of great ticket softwares. I'm a big Eventbrite guy. You want to make it very easy for people to get tickets. Those are going to be your things. You're then going to want to go to your venue beforehand. You're going to want to survey it. I'm actually doing that in 2 days. I'm going to survey a venue out here called Vulcan. Great venue, one of the top venues in Austin. And I'm going to be making sure that, okay, they have the right plugs for sound. They have the stuff that we need, power, everything like that, lighting, audio. Because I've seen people show up to shows and they don't have the right adapter to connect their computer or to connect their CDJs. Those are the things DJs use to spin and such. if they don't have the right adapters, I mean, it can destroy the show. So those are going to be the things you're going to look at. You're going to make sure everything's set with that. Your next thing is ticket sales. How do you sell tickets? So you look at, there are many like websites and things like that. Do 512 is a big one in Austin. There's some throughout, really all across the world. There's going to be websites like this who categorize events that are coming up, things like that. Whether it's getting it in your school newspaper, if they'll allow it, or it's, getting it. Basically, you need people to know about it. Social media is a great avenue to do this, doing targeted ads on Instagram. It's a few bucks. You can reach hundreds of people. That selling tickets is probably your most, once you have it set up, it's your most important thing. Day of is just making sure that you're on the ground, you're there. That is the one difficult thing about running an event production company. It is very dependent on me being there and me making sure that it's basically leveraging my relationships a lot of times too with either booking agents, artists, venue owners, larger companies. Done a lot of work with Night Culture. They're the second largest production company in the state. C3 as well. They're the largest in the state. They put on ACL and Live Nation, companies like this. You need to be, as you build up, you want to be able to have those relationships. But being on the ground is critically important so that you can make sure that it goes off without a hitch. Sending out your people, even very competent people, will sometimes have a little more difficulty, not be taken as seriously, or have some difficulty. I also find that one's legitimacy is very important when either getting yourself an event or organizing it. So part of my brand, a lot of times people would call me the suit guy. I'd always be wearing a suit. It was so that people would look at me and treat me differently. I remember in the beginning, I'd gotten a hoodie signed by Johnny Manziel. First time I met him. And I was literally doing a show at a nightclub that night. I was doing 2 shows with them, Friday and Saturday. And I go wearing that hoodie, the bouncer won't let me in. And he says, "Get out of here, kid." And I'm like, "Sir, I am literally the one organizing this entire event. My name's right here. This is me. It's literally my company." And of course, I'm very polite, never argue with a bouncer, just give the owner a call, figure it out, never argue with them. It just, you don't win. So eventually it all works out. They let me in. But the next day I showed up in a full 3-piece suit, no problem, walked right past them. That's how I met Lady Gaga. I was contracted to be a very auxiliary role on an event. But they said, "Oh, Ben, Lady Gaga's back there." And I said, "Oh, we got to seize this opportunity while we have it." So I had a piece of paper in my hand, walked with authority. Security guard comes up to me, asks me where the bathroom is. And I point in some random direction, and then I got to meet her. So kind of authorized, but that's why I won't say I've had the pleasure to work with her, because my role there was so small. I got plastic business cards. I'm a firm believer in physical business cards. You need to show off the legitimacy that you have. So that is how really the keys to putting on an event: legitimacy and ease of having your people buy tickets. When it comes to getting an artist book, it comes down a lot to who you know. You can work with an agency, but you're going to pay a good chunk of change. So start small and work your way up.
I can imagine some of the big names you've had performing probably helped that, but how do you even get in contact with them, or how does that booking process go? And is there any that are a little bit more difficult than others?
Yes. So how I came to get to it was basically I had met DJs and managers who would know either the DJ for a certain artist or the manager of an artist. And then they would introduce me to them. Through them, I would meet other people. It is a difficult thing to replicate. And that is something that always worries me, is what if, because I've had people like during COVID, a lot of people got out of the game. And so, I lost some contacts. I was able to rebuild that, but at the same time, it is such a personal based industry. And that is why it's very hard to break into booking and nightlife, especially as an independent company. It's very difficult because it's about who you know and who knows you. And then showing those people that you're competent, and over time, working with them more and more. There's one gentleman who is a former employee of C3 who does a lot of bookings out here. And he sent me a list of a bunch of artists that he could get. It's like, I can't, the money's there, of course. Yeah. I mean, I can get anybody. You got $500,000. We can bring down, Travis Scott or, people like that. You got $1 million, we can bring down Drake or I guess he's on the outs right now. Maybe Kendrick Lamar.
Yeah, maybe not him.
And let me say, Kendrick Lamar, probably the most gifted rapper I've ever seen. I've not had the pleasure to work with him, but he is amazing, very talented. Jeezy will always be my favorite. Loved him as a kid, had the pleasure to work with him. And I could sing along to all his songs without any issue. That kind of how you know the people and having a track record of successful events and the legitimacy so that they give you a chance. Discussing the list he sent me, it was a bunch of artists he could get and their prices. And some, it'd be 5,000, 10,000. Prices for booking artists have gone up substantially because artists don't make much money off their records. So really they make the majority of their money off concerts and brand deals. So he sent me this list, and some people, first one comes out, like Nicki Minaj had Ask Me. So the Ask Me means extremely expensive. Basically, though, once you start to meet those type of people and you get to know people that are at some of the larger nightclubs or venues out here or out wherever you are, you can slowly work your way into that. Also partnering and promoting for events with those larger people to get your foot in the door, and then being the guy who's getting people's numbers on your phone and giving out business cards is probably the way to break into it. Also, be friendly, be nice, and people can be arrogant in this industry, so just let them be. Show a little deference, and then one day you can be arrogant, or you can decide to break the chain.
There's a guy you've worked with that even in Ireland still to this day, and his music plays anywhere, the place is going to erupt. And I need to know what it was like having him play at your event, and that's Fetty Wap.
Fetty Wap is, in my opinion, a great man. And I know there might be some controversies or things like that. I don't know anything about criminal records, anything. I know, sadly, he's in prison right now for, I believe, marijuana. He was extremely nice. It was a pleasure working with him. We had him out at actually an apartment complex that set up a massive stage and wanted to do these shows. Somebody I worked with them a lot. And he was very nice. He did a great show. He was on time. A lot of artists. I did a show once. I won't name the artist. They were 2 hours late. I almost lost my shirt. I was so stressed. But luckily they showed up, did a great show. But that could have been a disaster. Fetty Wap was on time. Great to work with. And maybe he laughed at this, but I was like, oh, I have dyslexia, yada, yada. And sorry. Then I said something about, sorry that you're missing an eye. And it probably did not sound good. Because he was born without an eye.
Yeah.
But he was great. I remember going into his green room. There was a pile of something on the table that caused me a great amount of stress, because I would always, another event tip, always hire the police in your town to be the security for your events, because they won't shut you down if they're the security. So yeah, that was stressing me, but he was a real gentleman. I think, to quote him, he was said, my boy Benji always putting the events together, something like that. But yeah, he was great. His manager was a great guy. His DJ is a great guy. And I hope that when he gets out of prison, that he's able to return to concerts and things like that. And then any other controversies around him, I just don't know. But from my experience, he was a respectful gentleman, and he did a great show.
Putting on these events, and we heard from your description of what a good event is, you obviously have a lot of knowledge in that space. And if you're bringing artists like Fetty Wap and G-Eazy, it's very easy for things to get out of hand. People, a couple of drinks, and they think they're a lot bigger in life than they actually are. Is there anything you can put into place to kind of control the chaos?
Yes. So that is a very good point. You want to have either police security or you want to have people that are, and I'm not sure I would be in Ireland or other places, you want to have people that have a security license. I will never bring on, I'll usually go through a company, I will never bring on anyone that does not have a license for legal protection. You also want to do your shows at an actual venue because liability wise, they are responsible for making sure that the venue is safe. I would say overall, you have a good barricade, you have good security. You make sure that whoever is handling your backstage is. I've been let into things because I've hired the security guards before and they knew me because everybody uses the same companies. That is not good. You want somebody who is hard nosed. You want somebody who is not letting anybody in with their friends, somebody who is really keeping a lock on your, backstage, keeping the artist safe, keeping these things secure as they should be. A lot of times I'll do like a VIP section up front and then another gate right behind that with the rest of the crowd. So that keeps it a little less people. Overall, yeah, it's just being careful. Also, where you do your venue or where you do your show, what type of venue it is, what kind of crowd it usually attracts. Your artist, do they, get out? Do they get out of hand and people really go? Is it a crazy rock concert and people are going to go crazy and are like ready to riot? That is, something to be taken into account, have more or less security based off that. Overall, I haven't had too many problems. I've had a drunk guy body slam me and then get decked by security. Little old me is like, oh, I'm too weak. The Jedi are taking over. But overall, that's not been the biggest problem for me. Neither as people sneaking in or anything. It would more be either artists becoming overly inebriated or doing things that aren't allowed. That is actually the larger concern for me is the artists themselves being unreliable. Because usually crowds, say 90% of the time, at a show, let's say from like 1,000, 10,000 people, usually it's okay. I haven't encountered too many big issues.
I only have two questions left. One has absolutely nothing to do with anything we spoke about, but the only question I have left about your event company is something that I have been trying to research you enough so I could have an understanding of what this means, but I am having no luck. On your website and about
My
Benjamin
website is
Shrader,
terrible, but yeah.
There's a quote that says you have an unorthodox organizational structure. What does that mean?
Okay, you're gonna laugh at me because it's gonna sound really weird. I found that I give my people almost like military ranks. So I'll be like site director, minister. But it's funny, Bismarck said once you give somebody a medal, and I honestly actually don't do this as much anymore, but this especially when I had the IFC president, student body president, and me would work together on things. And, when you have people working for you that are younger, I found this to be kind of get people motivated, where I would have this kind of almost my event posters would look like propaganda posters. And I would have it where it was, Bismarck said, you give somebody a medal, you give a man a piece of ribbon and metal, and he'll do anything. So that was kind of what it was. Now, also, too, I treat my employees very much as, I guess, brothers and sisters in arms, that we're in this together. They get to see my more eccentric side. Overall, I don't do those as much. I told my person to add that. So, yeah. Honest to God, that is probably unorthodox being whether in my weird ranking or structures and things like that. Probably one of the most silly aspects and something I don't really do as much. Also, I would say that the way that we operate, there are not many independent event production companies. And the way that we kind of have to be, where it is a small team, but we're cohesive. And because we're small, we're able to move quickly. And able to address problems very quickly. So any unorthodoxness that I might have would more come from either when I'm walking around at an event, I'm quoting some nonsensical history thing, or God bless my poor cameraman, things he's heard me say, talking about, oh, what would Alexander say if he saw us now, and silly things like that. So more, I mean, that I could be just a bit odd, but luckily, you have to curb a lot of that when you're a serious business.
I had to mute my mic to laugh when you were explaining that because I just seen at the
Oh,
bottom
good. I'm glad you laughed.
At the bottom of your website bio, written by Site Director 3.
Yep. So Site 01 was College Station, Site 02 was Austin, and Site 03 was San Marcos. And so I had asked a guy, my quote-unquote site director, basically the person that managed all the events in that city, I said, can you write a little bio for me, but spice it up, make it sound a little weird? And he's like, okay. And so that is where that comes from, but it's a bit cringe. And on the 15th, 5 days from when we're recording, I have a meeting because I'm getting my website totally redone to get it good SEO and all that. So yeah, you got to see the last remnants of my eccentricness coming through.
Okay, I'll finish this off. We need to decompress with a question that has got nothing to do with you or me. What has been annoying you this week, Benjamin?
Well, I have to say, I think it is something that is a scourge and has cut every man and woman's heart at some point. Fake PNGs. They have the little hexagon or the gray and white hexes, and then you copy it and you paste it into your editing software, and the white and the gray hexes are still there. That is, it's a crime. It's a crime against humanity. The people that put those up, or they want you to log in and download something difficult. Well, I was making a flyer the other day, and I needed one of the company's PNGs, and I was like, oh, I can just email them. But I wanted to do it quickly, so I grabbed it off their website and I put it in, or I grabbed it off somewhere and I put it in, and it's a fake PNG. So I got to cut it out, and then it doesn't look right, and then I just had to ask them for it in the end. So yes, fake PNGs, a scourge on the earth.
You're giving me PTSD talking about graphic design things because I got quite the email last Sunday where one of my first ever guests. It's whenever I started making like a thumbnail for the Spotify episode, and so proud of it. Thought this is amazing. Spent so much time. I was looking myself in the mirror like I could design anything. And I got an email from one of my first ever guests that said, "Been loving listening to the show. You're having an incredible guest, but who is in the thumbnail for my episode? This whole time for the last 6 months, I've had some random person in my thumbnail."
Well, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to send you a PNG of me.
Please. I need clearance from everybody now. I'm going to have to go back through all my guests to make sure it's them.
Oh, that's funny.
I'm having issues.
No, it happens to the best of us. It really does. It's tough, getting all the layers to line up right. I'll give a little inside secret, I guess. The app I love is called PhotoLeap because you can use it on the phone. So if you need to edit really quickly, PhotoLeap, VideoLeap, they're both under, I think Lightworks makes them. I forget the name of the company, but they're great for on the phone. And then Final Cut Pro for the computer is great. And Photoshop.
Benjamin, it's been nothing but an honour, and it's been such a roller coaster of a conversation. I knew it was going to be very up and down all over the place, but I still can't put together how your stories ended up like this.
Well, it definitely has been crazy, and I have to thank you so much and the ASG team. It has been an absolute pleasure and a great time, and I look forward to talking to you guys very soon.
No problem, Benjamin. Have a wonderful day.
Same to you. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.